going to start with the most important question up front. When Universal and Chris Nolan came to you and said, we want to make a sequel to The Adjustment Bureau, but we want to call it Oppenheimer, and it's going to be about Robert Oppenheimer, but it's really a sequel to The Adjustment Bureau.
And we were like, wait, you can't go through doors in Oppenheimer with your fedora? You didn't wear a fedora
I didn't,
in this.
yeah, and then it said I wasn't wearing a fedora. He wore the fedora.
In this one. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for my stupid. So listen, I'm a fan of both of your works, and there's going to be a lot of people out there who have actually never seen anything you've done before. For someone who's never seen anything, what's the first thing you'd like them watching and why?
Oppenheimer. Really, I mean, this is a really, it's the biggest story of our lives and of the last, maybe in the history of the human species so far. And told by a director who's at the absolute top of his game, and with one of the great screen performances at the center of it. And so Chris always said to us when we were making it, like, this is, I need you guys in support. That's the mission, basically, is the supporting Cillian. This whole movie hinges on that performance. It's got to be. It'll resonate emotionally if we're with that character. Mm-hmm. He wrote the script in the first person, which I'd never seen before. So instead of saying Oppenheimer walked across the room, it's I walk across the room, and and so it's like it had that. It just ripped you into that world, and with given what's at stake, like there's not a more important story out there.
Agreed. Sorry.
You can answer the next question.
What's your next question?
I am curious. You guys obviously read a lot of scripts and you get offered a lot of roles. What is it like when Chris calls you or texts you and
says, just say whatever you want. Whatever you need. Do you need me to say a line? Do you want me to do catering? Like, what do you need from me? And it's so pulse racing when you know he wants to meet you. It's the best feeling ever because he's so extraordinary. Like, he's of such vast talent and ability. You're going to be a part of a film that is lasting in whatever capacity that is. And so I was thrilled to meet him. And yeah, he's just a cool guy as well. You could kind of talk to him. We talked for hours even before he gave me the script. And I went to his living room and I read the script. And then we talked more afterwards. And I think that's what I love most about him, the curiosity in the process, the passion for it, the passion for actors and what you need, and to take away all the chaos from you, even though I'm sure to keep all the plates in the air of shooting a film of this scale. He must have had endless plates in the air. He must have had a hurricane going on inside of him throughout the whole process.
But you just don't feel
You don't feel it. You feel this focus, this beautiful masterclass all the time.
Because he wants to create an environment, even at that scale of storytelling, where you're free creatively to come up with your best ideas and to kind of put them out there. And there's no rigidity to the way you would think with that much going on that, he would say, well, say your line here and cross over to there. And there's none of that.
My favorite is how English he is when he's happy. It's my favorite. He's like, yeah, good, happy. Yeah, okay, moving on. That's good. And you're just like, was it good?
Yeah, that's Chris at his happiest, by the way. That's
exactly.
Like, the scene went well.
You mentioned it already, how you read the script in his living room. And I know he asks people to come to his house to read the script. What is it actually like for you sitting in his house reading the script, knowing he's in the other room waiting for you to finish?
Well, in my case, he actually came, this is kind of a funny story. He came to my apartment here in New York, and I live in the same apartment building as Emily. And so he came because he had a reason to be in New York, personal reason to be in New York. So he goes, I'm going to come over and I'm going to bring you the script. And so I said, great. So he comes over and we talk, and it's a Friday night, and it's getting late, and he says, so you're going to read this tomorrow morning? And I said, yes. He said, what time? And I said, I'll read it at 9. He said, how long will it take you? And I go, I read it exactly at the same pace the movie will play. And he goes, I'll be here at noon. And I said, okay. So it turns out, we came to find out later, that he knew he wanted Emily in that part and me in my part, but he didn't want to offer her the part at the same apartment building on the same day because he didn't want it to seem to us
Convenient casting.
he only just went to one apartment building to cast his movie.
Who else lives here?
So he pretended that he didn't, and then he called her a few days later and said, "Oh, would you like to?" Because she was in L.A. She happened to be in L.A. on business. "Would you like to come over and read the script at my?" So it was very fun.
But I think I was probably nervous reading it at first, thinking, "Am I going to be behind the physics and the science? Am I going to be able to wrap my head around all of it?" And then you realize that is the backdrop. That is not the full thrust of the script. That's not what's so pulse racing about it. It was such an emotional script to read. And it's really about the trauma of living with a brain like that, and then the ramifications of what that brain brought to the world. But I knew he would come in. The worst thing is when you read a script and you have to perform your love of it. There's none of that with Chris. You don't have to, nothing's performative ever because of what he creates is so extraordinary. So he came in and I just said, my heart's racing. I said, I feel like my whole body's on fire reading this script. And you don't have to perform it because it is.
I saw the film last night in IMAX 70 millimeter at the Lincoln Square Theater. It is, I mean, there's no words for that presentation. Have you guys seen it in IMAX 70?
Oh,
Yes.
And what is it? Can you watch yourselves on screen or you get a little tweaked out by it?
I mean, I don't, sometimes I do if I think the film's not very good, but I felt this was like a full kidnap, this one. I thought my bones were going to shatter. I felt this like weight on my breastplate the whole way through it. Yeah. And you feel like you're inside of it. So I think we were all sort of lost for words afterwards. It was emotional. I watched it with Robert and we were both really emotional watching it.
Yeah, and I had spoken to Emily because she saw it before I did, and so I was kind of prepared for that. So I didn't think about watching.
We couldn't stop talking to you about it, could we? We were just going on and on.
It's hard to stop talking about. It's really, it's really something.
Oh, completely. And the shame is that there's only, I think, 30-something theaters around the world that can show it in IMAX 70.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, for people watching this, for the love of God, if you live near one.
Please go see it in IMAX. It's what it was. Sure. He sweat bullets to make it in IMAX.
Well, they invented black and white IMAX film for the movie.
For this movie.
100%. So I want to actually specifically ask about working with the IMAX cameras, because what is it like when you're next to one of these? It's a beast of a camera.
It's big.
They're big,
ton of noise. What is it actually like working with one of those? And it's so expensive every shot.
Yeah. But, you're kind of insulated from that side of it. I'm sure Emma, as a producer is probably much more aware of that than the actors are. But like at the beginning of my career, movie cameras were quite big. And I remember having to kind of in my teens and early 20s, having to think about technically trying to assimilate that into my process. And then everything kind of got easier. The light, the cameras, if you're working on dig, which Chris never does, but they're much more light sensitive. So there's less gear now. But in general, the cameras are different. There's less gear. So going back to IMAX it felt like at the beginning of my career, it doesn't feel obtrusive.
It's more that they're really, really loud. So I think you just know that it's not going to be a take where they'll use the sound that you did, but then Chris will sort of pre-record it. He'll use a different take where you can use the same dialogue within the IMAX frame as well. So he tries to do everything in camera. You don't want to be ADRing stuff, but I think you get that sense because Hoyte, I don't know how he slings that IMAX camera on his shoulder without breaking his back, but he does. And because Hoyte is so sort of sensitive to the process as well, you stop noticing him. You don't notice Chris, who's a big guy, and he's always standing
right next to the camera
and just watching you like that.
The way the old school, it's what Coppola told me years ago. He said that's what Antonio said to him. He said, you sit next to your operator, you look at it with your naked eye, and when you're done, you don't
notice him, do you? Because
you don't notice him at all.
They sort of disappear in some ways because there's so much focus.
But also they're kind of with you. You're kind of there in a group talking anyway, and then suddenly Hoyte's got the camera on his. You know what I mean? It feels so intimate. Even though it's at this massive scale, they somehow managed to make it feel so relaxed. Yeah. It's really something.
On that note, I need to go. I really want to say sincere congratulations.
Thank
This movie is
you.
incredible.